I'm literally trying to do the whole disappearing thing. So yeah, welcome to a new video. So I thought to talk about 12 things I have learned having been on YouTube for a year plus. That's it. Here are all the 12 things I have learned in a year plus. That's it. The first thing, nothing goes according to plan, which is so true because initially when I started, I was kind of like, okay, cool, like you shot this video, therefore you should move it like on and then post it and stuff. It's quite interesting how like the order at which it was being posted, it wasn't necessarily the way it was being shot. And majority of the videos that you currently see wasn't the case. And I keep getting distracted by, that's the thing about like shooting stuff. I keep getting distracted by text and stuff. Wait, 1 second. What was I saying? Nothing goes according to plan. It's so true because like, so here's the thing, like when I had initially started, I literally had the whole idea of like on plane air and like a bunch of shit. And the thing is that it's so interesting because the first video I had uploaded was an on plane air video. Bear in mind, this video should have lasted for like 4 to 5 minutes-ish. It's funny because at the time I literally thought it was going to be like one video, and then I started thinking on the fly of like, oh, make it like multiple videos and stuff. It's still going to be an ongoing series, but essentially the order at which it was being posted doesn't necessarily mean that's when it was being shot. Number 2, just shoot and post when you're ready. So like, okay, where do I even start with this concept? Prior to all of YouTube sort of thing, I was kind of like, okay, like, this was what came to mind. Quarantine came forth, obviously. It was like a learning opportunity for each and every one of us. And I was like, okay, let's film ourselves going grocery shopping, doing mundane shits that everyone else does and stuff. That being the first ever video I shot, ended up being something that was then uploaded like years later. It was like shot in like 2021. At the time, I was kind of like, well, like this isn't necessarily like kind of what I want. I'm more like artsy driven, and I just feel like it makes more sense to lean more towards that direction, if that makes sense. Number 3, there are a million ways to edit. So like prior to YouTube, I didn't know anything about editing, and I literally just utilized tools I was familiar with, like Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. So that was strictly how I used to edit all my YouTube videos. Like when it came to like text and annotations, I'll put it on Instagram story, take a screenshot, put it back on sort of thing. In some instances, I still do scenarios of that nature, but like in alternative instances, that's not the case. I think essentially I've just sort of like learned on the go and then just kind of like developed on from there, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just thought I would talk about that. And then to add as well, what I had done to help was sort of like videos that I personally did like, I created a playlist on my YouTube channel to serve as the foundation of what I would like my video to be like, if that makes sense. Number 4, type your thoughts so you do not forget. So literally, video concepts, anything in relation to videos or like thoughts or like projects that I would like to work on sort of thing. I literally type it on my phone. And I think it's so like convenient and so like easily accessible for me sort of thing, because there's been instances whereby I did it and I never can remember what I wanted to write on. I guess it wasn't destined to happen sort of thing. But like, I'm just sort of like, if that comes to mind, it might never be executed, but at least it's a matter of putting it out there so that maybe it could end up being a piggyback on a different video or just end up being like a video on its own, if that makes sense. Number 5, post what you personally like to watch. And I feel like, okay, I know like there are instances whereby one feels like you need to imitate what's working and what already worked. And I feel like eventually you then are sort of like, okay, well, that's not really my vibe sort of thing. I obviously knew I wanted something artsy, something more like architecture, interior design, sort of like more of the creative field driven. But then I wasn't quite sure in terms of the avenue to follow. But I just feel like that sort of served as like a playing field for me to then like do whatever I wanted while staying within what was more like authentic towards me. The minute you obviously have that sort of approach, you're then literally just having people of that mindset more driven towards there. I don't know if that makes sense. And then if tomorrow it ends up being like something geared towards cooking, then sure. Number 6, be spontaneous. There are instances I know in an ideal world, one wants to obviously shoot in the studio, or one wants to shoot at a certain time and like shoot at certain locations and have things go on. And I feel like sometimes when you're sort of reacting more on the whim, it's a lot more like, I think it's a lot more interesting and more insightful. I don't know if that makes sense. And I think like a bunch of videos I've done, like for instance, like when I painted at Palace of Fine Art and like the bit where the birds flew in, it's something that I wouldn't have planned, or if I had this sort of like plan, it might have not worked. But it's so interesting how like something of that nature ended up being something very like cinematic. Number 7, change locations and respond in the moment. So it's kind of like piggyback from other things I have mentioned, but essentially, it's just like, okay, for instance, I filmed something in relation to ARE stuff, like architecture exam sort of thing, and obviously I had like bunch of spaces I had in mind, but then I started taking things into consideration in terms of like vehicles and like pedestrians and all of that, and that then led towards where I could then film things instead. And I just feel like while even where I ended up going wasn't necessarily like the most ideal spot, I feel it's also created an opportunity to have like a different approach, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's just a matter of like changing locations and changing it back here. Do you get what I mean? 8, if you get bored, end it, postpone, or like keep going. I think you're the driver of the ship, and then just do whatever comes to mind. I don't feel like shooting this today. I'll take a break, because like there are actual like other things I do as well. There are like more things of priority that comes to play that needs to be focused on, and or like it's just one of those weeks I'm just sort of like, I'm too busy, I'm exhausted, I don't feel like doing this now. So like it could be like a month later. You know what I mean? Number 9, you'd evolve as you keep posting and keep editing or whatever. I feel like obviously there's been instances whereby some videos I've watched now, I'm sort of like, oh, it would have been cool to like have shot it this way, or like, oh, I'm not too sure on how to do this. And like, I've started having this mindset of like, this is what came to mind in the moment, and let's just move on from there. I know like sometimes we want to individually have this sort of like, oh, like we're on this like cool wave sort of thing. And I think like it's also worthwhile to sort of be like, okay, like personally, like that made more sense. Next time, maybe I'll try something else, or I completely use the same like approach and stuff. And I think because of how like broad the playing field is, it just makes it a lot more like, not, should I say fun, and more like not taken too seriously. Number 10, create a schedule and alter as you progress and move on. So basically, not that I necessarily have a schedule, but like I create a schedule to kind of serve as a baseline. Once upon a time, there was a time of like, okay, like just doing things on the whim sort of thing. I think it's worthwhile to just be like, okay, we're doing X on this day. Why don't we then use that opportunity to talk about something else sort of thing? So it's sort of like having this sort of like duality to get multiple things done with one thing that you had intentionally went for sort of thing. I don't know if that makes sense. Number 11, the next video is where you can always experiment. Obviously, from on plain air videos, I'm then saying like, oh, ranking 15 architecture renderings. And then like when I think of different individual spots, or like the real estate one, it's sort of like they're all like individually edited differently, but like kind of like have a similar base. And I just feel like there's been moments whereby, like for instance, whereby I talk about a year shot on film sort of thing. I'm sort of like, oh, there are moments where I feel like I should have shot in a different manner, and I'm just sort of like, well, it just wasn't meant to be in that moment sort of thing. And I think while it's fine to have this sort of like, oh, I would like it to be filmed a certain way, I think it's also good to have this sort of like, well, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's just like if it doesn't work out, try something else. Like print it off, annotate, or like use InDesign, use Photoshop, use Snapchat, Instagram. There are like a bunch of platforms that I think, oh, here's something else I also want to mention. I've realized that a lot of the times, if you utilize resources that are not normally utilized for that specific thing, you end up coming up with a new way to do something else. I don't know if that makes sense. Number 12, yeah, just keep posting. Post if you feel like, or you never want to post, and that's perfectly fine. Or it's something that you end up posting years down the line, that's perfectly fine. You're in charge, you're the one driving the ship, and yeah, that's it. That's the end of the video. Okay, see ya. Bye. Oh, that was actually good. I hope. And here's some more videos coming forth, and or no video coming on anymore, but like in general, here's some more videos. Most likely, yeah. I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah, see ya. Woohoo! New video. Okay, what's this character? Because it's almost time to do it. I'm literally trying to do like a thumbnail.